When you grow up and discover that the truths your parents or aunts told you as a child were not all there was to them, how does that make you feel? A little upset and surprised, right? When E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, was initially broadcast in 1982, the public responded favorably. It's interesting to note that many people were moved to tears, laughter, and affection by a wrinkly little extraterrestrial that only wanted to return home. However, are you aware of the amount of work that went on behind the scenes? There were several unexpected elements in the movie's creation, including casting choices that nearly spoiled the fun. Get ready because the following facts will definitely make your eyes widen and flood your thoughts with many questions. Number 20. One alien suit, many wearers. When audiences first met E.T., they believed they were watching a single puppet brought to life with hidden wires. However, the truth behind the alien's movements will definitely blow your mind. According to reports, the alien suit was not worn by just one performer. Instead, several children, each with different abilities, climbed inside the alien costume at different times to give E.T. his unforgettable personality. Now that explains the versatility of those little aliens, don't you think? Doesn't it make you wonder how such a small alien could feel so alive on screen? One of the most remarkable performers was a 12-year-old boy born without legs named Matthew Demerit. He was able to fit inside the alien suit and give E.T. his waddling gait due to his small stature and unusual body type. Later, Matthew acknowledged in interviews that he felt both anxious and honored to have such a significant role. He had to shuffle around on his hands to make E.T. look clumsy but curious. At other times, small people actors were used, especially for scenes where the alien needed to reach or bend naturally. Impressively, each switch between performers was carefully choreographed, so the audience would never notice. Isn't it incredible that what seemed like one continuous performance was really a carefully stitched puzzle of many talents? Of course, the alien wasn't always a costume. For close-ups, the team relied on highly advanced animatronics. The head alone had dozens of tiny mechanical parts controlled by wires and levers, which created E.T.'s blinking eyes and twitching lips. The result was so lifelike that even Drew Barrymore, who was only 7 years old at the time, thought E.T. was a real creature. In fact, she once asked Steven Spielberg if she could talk to him during breaks. Of course, Spielberg played along, making sure her belief in the alien helped bring out her natural reactions. In an interview with Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show, Drew claimed that Spielberg asked her to make a facial expression of awe at something to be considered for the role, and that was how she got into E.T. Can you imagine acting with something you thought was alive when it was really a mix of wires, suits, and multiple hidden performers? Number 19. The origin of the alien's smoky voice. Interestingly, few sounds in cinema are as instantly recognizable as E.T.'s voice. That gravelly whisper, at once fragile and wise, gave the alien his soul. Strangely enough, this unforgettable voice was not the work of a trained actor or a fancy studio trick. You heard that right? In reality, it belonged to an ordinary woman named Pat Welsh, whom she had discovered by chance while shopping in a camera store. Isn't it fascinating how some of the greatest movie moments begin in the most unexpected places? Welsh was a heavy smoker, and her years of cigarettes had left her with a raspy, breathy tone. Sound designer Ben Burt heard her speaking and knew at once that her voice carried something unearthly, something both comforting and strange. According to the report, he persuaded her to record lines for E.T., paying her around $380 after she had recorded for about 9.5 hours. Welsh later admitted she had no idea she would end up shaping one of the most beloved characters of all time. However, E.T.'s voice wasn't hers alone. Burt layered her words with sounds of raccoons, otters, and his own breathing to create the alien's unique cadence.
One of them is a production recordist, which is a person who is recording during the actual filming of a movie. They'll have a microphone on the set and they will gather dialogue and some sound effects if they're available during the actual shooting.
Effortlessly, E.T. retained his human-based speech while gaining an otherworldly flavor from these odd touches. However, the emotional impact was conveyed through Welsh's smoky tone, which gave viewers the impression that the alien was both weak and yet endowed with wisdom. Specifically, This fact serves as a reminder that common voices and unnoticed details frequently produce cinematic magic. If someone else had spoken for E.T., would it have had the same emotional impact on us? Number 18. Tears that won the role. The casting of Elliot, the lonely boy who befriends E.T., could have changed the entire fate of the movie. Hundreds of children auditioned, each trying to capture the mix of wonder, fear, and tenderness that the role demanded. Yet none of them moved Steven Spielberg until one boy sat down in front of him and cried with such heartbreaking honesty that the entire room fell silent. Can you imagine being only 10 years old and holding the power to melt the heart of one of Hollywood's greatest directors? That boy was Henry Thomas. Unlike other child actors who faked their way through tears, Thomas reached for something painfully real. When Spielberg asked him to imagine losing something he loved, Thomas thought of his dog that had recently passed away. The memory cracked his voice, filled his eyes with tears, and poured raw emotion into his audition, saying, "You can't take him away. He's mine." His small shoulders shook, his words trembled, and suddenly the scene became more than acting. It became true. Doesn't it make you wonder how much of Elliot's sorrow in the film came directly from Henry's own grief? Spielberg, clearly moved, said in a whisper to the casting crew, "All right, kid, you got the job."
Forever, and I wouldn't take him away. Okay.
Okay, kid, you got the job.
Remarkably, that single moment of vulnerability helped to establish Thomas's role in film history. Online users can still access the audition tape, which captures the unadulterated agony that earned him the part. If another child had been chosen in place of Thomas, would they have connected with the viewers? We wouldn't want to be selfish here, but if you've watched the film, you would definitely agree with me that Thomas was the perfect character for that role. During filming, this decision paid off in moments like Elliot's tearful goodbye to E.T., a scene that still leaves audiences sobbing decades later. Was it really just acting, or were those tears the same ones that won him the part in the first place? Henry Thomas later admitted in interviews that he didn't fully understand the scale of what he was stepping into. To him, it was simply a story about a boy and his friend. Those authentic tears reminded Spielberg of what he wanted the entire movie to be about, the raw honesty of childhood. Number 17. Einstein, a poet, and a pug walk into a lab. In their quest to find the ideal voice for E.T., the filmmakers did not simply choose one candidate. They blended sounds in ways as peculiar as the alien itself. The team once likened the deliberate pauses of Albert Einstein during his infrequent radio speeches to the softness of a poet reciting verses, the peculiar growls of a pug, and more. However, what's the connection between those three? On paper, nothing at all. Yet when blended, thereby giving E.T. a voice that felt both ancient and innocent. Thankfully, sound designer Ben Burtt, who had already worked magic in Star Wars, understood that an alien voice should not feel like a robotic trick. It needed warmth, rhythm, and a sense of curiosity. He listened to recordings of poets whose voices carried emotion between every word. He then gave it texture and unpredictability by incorporating a pug's snort and breathing patterns. Subsequently, he examined Einstein's deliberate pace and how the physicist occasionally let quiet speak for him. Together, these layers created something special that helped listeners forget they were hearing a synthetic production. Surprisingly, what happened on screen was nothing short of remarkable. When E.T. whispered, "E.T. phone home," viewers weren't just hearing a sound effect.
E.T. home phone.
Number 16. The world through a child's eyes. In a nutshell, filmmaking is often about perspective, but Spielberg took it further than most. He insisted that the camera view the world almost entirely from a child's eye level, creating a universe where adults appeared distant, looming, or even faceless. This choice was not simply aesthetic, it was a deliberate method to evoke Elliot's vulnerability and wonder in the audience. Every doorway seemed massive, every hallway stretched endlessly, and every adult gesture carried authority and a hint of mystery. The result was actually breathtaking. Ordinary objects such as bikes, fences, and even streetlights became monumental in Elliot's eyes, intensifying the film's magical realism. Scenes like Elliot and E.T. riding the bike past the moon were iconic, not just for their visual flair, but because the concept was grounded in the imaginative lens of childhood. Spielberg wanted viewers to feel the exhilaration, fear, and awe that only a child experiences when encountering something truly extraordinary. Casting, set design, and even blocking were all influenced by this perspective. Adults were sometimes cropped out or shot in soft focus, keeping the narrative anchored to the children. Every interaction felt filtered through Elliot's mind, from curiosity to confusion. The genius of this technique lies in its subtle manipulation of emotion. Audiences do not just watch Elliot, they inhabit his world. By the time E.T. extends his glowing finger or hides from the authorities, viewers are already living inside Elliot's fear and delight. Spielberg's method reminds us of the power of storytelling when we see life not as it is, but as it feels to someone discovering it for the first time. Number 15. Real-time filming. Most movies are stitched together from countless scenes filmed out of order, but Spielberg took a bold approach with E.T. He filmed much of the movie in chronological order. Remarkably, this method allowed Henry Thomas, Drew Barrymore, and the other child actors to grow genuinely with their experiences, keeping their reactions spontaneous and authentic. It is one thing to act a moment and another to live it. Scenes of fear, joy, or grief became cumulative each moment, building upon the last. When Elliot first hid E.T. in the closet or later cried over the alien's injuries, the intensity was unmistakable. It is not just acting, it is a lived experience captured on camera. This choice was not simple. Logistical challenges were common. Locations, props, and even weather had to be carefully managed to maintain continuity. Crew members had to adapt quickly. Shooting schedules had to remain flexible, and actors had to remember the subtle shifts in their relationships with one another. The reward, however, was cinematic magic. By the final scenes, audiences were swept along with the children's journey, feeling every suspenseful moment and every fleeting joy as if they were there themselves. Real-time filming was not just a technique, it was a commitment to truth, making E.T. resonate across generations. Number 14. The Lost Sequel. Few fans know that Spielberg once considered a sequel to E.T. titled E.T. 2, Nocturnal Fears. Unlike most franchise follow-ups, it was intended to expand the alien's mythology, exploring his origins and how he might interact with humans in secret. Concept art presents E.T. in more enigmatic and sinister settings, a world quite different from the first film's suburban tranquility. Spielberg even imagined revealing the alien's real name, Zrek. However, the project never took off. The filmmakers were concerned that a follow-up would diminish the intimacy and emotional impact of the first film, as E.T. was about human connection rather than the galaxies. Even though the sequel was never made, the planning for it led to additional behind-the-scenes innovations. This led to the testing and improvement of E.T.'s set designs, puppetry, and even costume ideas, which later contributed to the success of other Spielberg productions. Fans were left with a lingering sense of what might have been after seeing sketches, notes, and interviews that alluded to the alien's deeper universe. Perhaps the magic of E.T. is that it exists as a singular story. Sometimes leaving questions unanswered preserves the wonder. Would audiences have embraced Zrek, or would revealing too much have destroyed the mystery that made E.T. so enchanting in the first place? Number 13. There was actual medical staff. Hospital scenes in E.T. feel tense, chaotic, and frighteningly real. What most viewers do not realize is that Spielberg cast real medical personnel for these sequences, not just actors. Check vitals, and respond to emergencies. The sterile sounds of beeping machines, hurried footsteps, and clinical conversation were all enhanced by these real-life practitioners. Drew Barrymore and Henry Thomas were immersed in an environment that felt unpredictable, which heightened their performances. Uniquely, this decision had another effect. It kept the children grounded. They were not acting for cameras. They were responding to real people, real gestures, and real authority. Spielberg's attention to detail transformed what could have been a conventional hospital, set into a place of suspense, fear, and even wonder. Audiences may never consciously notice the medical staff, but their impact is undeniable. Number 12. I Do Not Like His Feet. Was real. Did you know that the line, "I don't like his feet," was not scripted but was Drew Barrymore's genuine reaction when she saw the alien's feet? You heard that right. So Spielberg, who was always attentive to natural performances, chose to keep it in the film. That candid moment perfectly illustrates the delicate balance between child actors and puppetry. Barrymore's authenticity gives the scene humor and humanity, breaking the tension in a way that scripted lines might have failed to achieve. The response also highlights Spielberg's instinct for trusting his young actors, allowing their reactions to shape the story organically. It serves as a reminder that in filmmaking, sometimes the best moments arise from improvisation, observation, and honesty. What feels real on screen often begins as a fleeting, unnoticed response behind the camera. Without Drew Barrymore's instinct, that simple line might have been lost, and the scene would not carry the same charm. Number 11. A budget just for the aliens. Thousands of extras, expansive sets, and lavish effects are all likely to come to mind when you think of blockbuster filmmaking. To make sure the puppet could convey emotion, move realistically, and engage the audience on a deeply human level, every dollar allotted to E.T. was carefully considered. The puppet was a marvel of practical effectiveness rather than just a simple prop. Every muscle, joint, and eye needed careful engineering. The systems that enabled E.T. to move his head, blink, and even make small finger movements were refined over the course of months by animators. These were not small expenses. Materials alone accounted for a sizable portion of the budget, ranging from servo motors to flexible latex. Then came the labor costs. Teams of puppeteers operating in shifts, rehearsing synchronization, and coordinating every movement with the actors and the camera. Every scene involving the alien required multiple takes to get the timing and expression just right. Spielberg recognized the need for E.T. to be more than just a monster. He needed to be lovable, vulnerable, and believable. So he invested in multiple versions of the puppet to serve different purposes. One for wide shots, another for close-ups, and a third for scenes requiring stunts or physical interaction with the children. Each puppet was built with precision, and each came at a high cost, reflecting the director's commitment to authenticity. The decision to allocate a separate budget exclusively for E.T. transformed the production. Instead of rushing through scenes or cutting corners, the crew could focus on perfecting the alien's performance. Henry Thomas and Drew Barrymore reacted to something tangible rather than a placeholder or green screen, resulting in natural and heartfelt interactions that still resonate decades later. This financial dedication also extended to sound design. The alien's voice, created by Ben Burt, involved layering animal noises, human whispers, and subtle mechanical sounds to achieve the perfect tone. Money was invested not just in mechanics but in creating a living personality, a character whose every glance and gesture carried meaning. By treating E.T. as the emotional and technical centerpiece of the film, Spielberg demonstrated that a targeted budget can have a profound impact on the narrative. It allowed the alien to breathe, to move, and to captivate viewers in a way that would not have been possible otherwise. Fortunately, the investment paid off handsomely, not only at the box office, but in the timeless emotional connection audiences feel today. Could any other film have achieved such enduring magic without giving the alien its own carefully protected budget? Spielberg's answer was a resounding no. Number 10. E.T.'s eyes were hidden technology. The eyes of E.T. were among the most fascinating achievements in practical effects. Beneath the soft skin were tiny mechanisms that allowed subtle blinking and eye movements, creating the illusion of emotion. It is astonishing to think that what appeared to be simple puppet eyes were actually a sophisticated blend of mechanics and artistry. Special technicians worked tirelessly to design tiny levers and rods that could move the eyelids and pupils in precise ways. These movements were coordinated with the voice and body of the puppet to make E.T. feel alive. The eyes conveyed curiosity, fear, and joy. Actors often said that their performances changed depending on how realistic E.T.'s eyes appeared. A blink or subtle squint could trigger a spontaneous reaction, making scenes more authentic. The audience feels a connection with E.T. because those eyes seem to understand and respond to human emotion. It is remarkable to consider how much thought went into these tiny details. Technology and artistry combined to create a character who could communicate empathy without speaking. Those hidden mechanisms ensured that every glance E.T. gave carried meaning and depth. Number 9. the keys that tell a story. In E.T., there is a small, ordinary object that has an extraordinary role. The keys Elliot discovered on a night that changed his life. These keys are not just props, they are storytelling devices. Spielberg knew that small details could convey emotion and narrative power without the need for dialogue. Notably, the keys became a symbol of both connection and transition. Literally and figuratively, Elliot used them to unlock doors, moving between the human world and the alien experience. If you were an observant viewer, you must have noticed how the keys appeared at pivotal moments, highlighting Elliot's growing courage and understanding of E.T.'s needs. Every prop in Spielberg's hands is intentional. The keys are simple but loaded with meaning. They remind audiences that stories are not always told in words. Sometimes they are told in gestures, glances, and objects that carry significance. By focusing on the keys, Spielberg invites viewers to pay attention to the small things that shape the story. A single object becomes a bridge between worlds and emotions, enriching the narrative beyond its initial appearance. Number 8. Only 3 alien props existed. The E.T. puppet is so iconic that many assume there were dozens of versions. In truth, only 3 full alien props existed during production. Each one was painstakingly built to serve different purposes, such as wide shots, close-ups, and stunt work. Maintaining only 3 puppets required careful planning. Scenes had to be coordinated around the availability of the props, and any mistake could cause delays. Each puppet had unique capabilities and limitations, meaning the crew had to adapt constantly to achieve the desired effect. Despite the small number, the team brought E.T. to life convincingly. The puppets were animated by skilled operators who coordinated every movement with the actors and the camera. The filmmakers learned to choreograph shots, think ahead, and use camera angles to make each puppet seem fully alive. The fact that audiences never notice this demonstrates how artistry and careful planning can overcome practical restrictions. Number 7. Walkie-talkies instead of guns. In a world where tension could easily have been heightened with weapons, Spielberg made a daring and deliberate choice: walkie-talkies instead of guns. Imagine the stakes if every scene involving government agents and children had been armed. The film could have veered into anxiety and fear. Instead, Spielberg chose simplicity, giving characters a tool that was functional but harmless, keeping the focus on suspense, curiosity, and emotional connection rather than danger. Walkie-talkies became more than a prop, they were a storytelling device. By providing these communicators to the agents, Spielberg made sure that the tension persisted without posing any deadly risks. Pursuit scenes suddenly depended less on physical force and more on character ingenuity, timing, and clever planning. Both kids and viewers could put themselves in the story without worrying about getting hurt right away. While still being approachable and relatable, the hum of static, the hushed instructions, and the urgent exchanges conveyed a genuine sense of urgency. Additionally, using walkie-talkies had a practical effect on performances, allowing the young actors to respond naturally to sound cues and dialogue from a distance, creating authentic responses of surprise, fear, and cleverness. Spielberg often emphasized improvisation, and the simple device allowed for organic interactions. Henry Thomas and his co-stars could manipulate and respond to the walkie-talkies with genuine curiosity and excitement, enhancing the realism of each sequence. This choice reflects Spielberg's broader philosophy. Tension and drama do not always require violence. By carefully selecting props that support storytelling rather than distract from it, strategy, and the thrill of evasion, without ever crossing into terror or gore, audiences are drawn into each chase not by fear of harm, but by the clever choreography of communication. The walkie-talkie becomes a symbol of ingenuity, a marker of resourcefulness, and clever problem-solving. Spielberg transformed a simple object into a tool that drives narrative, reveals character, and sustains suspense. By choosing a walkie-talkie instead of weapons, Spielberg not only preserved the innocence and magic of the film, but also showed how thoughtful prop selection can define the tone and heart of a story. Number 6. The worst video game ever Have you ever pondered how a hugely successful film could inspire the worst video game ever made? In addition to its outstanding filmmaking, E.T. is notorious for its terrible video game adaptation. To meet the holiday deadline, Atari rushed the game's development, giving developers just 5 weeks to make it playable. Can you imagine the pressure of turning one of the most beloved films of all time into a functional game in just over a month? The result was chaos. Players wandered through mazes trying to collect pieces to phone home, while constantly falling into pits. Fans expected magic. They got confused. Critics panned it instantly, and millions of unsold copies ended up buried in a landfill, creating an urban legend that persists to this day. Yet the game's failure reveals an important truth about adaptation. Even the strongest source material cannot survive if it is rushed or mishandled. It raises a question. Can a masterpiece on film ever truly survive in another medium without care and patience? In a way, the E.T. video game became a cultural artifact, a cautionary tale about the dangers of corporate haste. It contrasts starkly with the delicate care Spielberg and his team used to bring E.T. to life on screen. Perhaps the real lesson is that art, like storytelling, requires time, attention, and respect for the audience's imagination. Number 5. A scene saved for later. Have you ever watched a movie and wondered why certain emotional moments feel perfectly timed, as if they were lifted from real life rather than scripted? In E.T., Steven Spielberg deliberately saved one of the most powerful scenes for later in the filming process. Instead, it came after weeks of careful preparation, allowing the young actors, especially Henry Thomas, to develop a genuine sense of trust and familiarity with the alien puppet. Why would Spielberg wait to capture such a crucial moment? The answer is both simple and profound. Spielberg understood that true emotion cannot be forced. No matter how talented an actor might be, pretending to form a bond with an inanimate puppet is very different from reacting to something you feel connected to. By postponing the filming of this scene, he allowed Henry Thomas to experience real curiosity, tenderness, and even wonder. Over those weeks, Thomas interacted with the puppet in various ways, discovering its personality and quirks, learning how it moved and responded. Every gasp, every gentle stroke of the alien's head, every smile, and even the tiniest tremor in his hands carried genuine emotion. This patience elevated the film far beyond what could have been achieved with immediate filming. Viewers do not just watch Elliot hold E.T., they feel it. The authenticity of that moment transcends acting. Audiences sense the trust, the awe, and the fragile innocence of a child encountering something extraordinary for the first time. Spielberg's decision illustrates a key lesson in filmmaking. Timing and emotional preparation can be just as crucial as technical skill or visual spectacle. Spielberg created a benchmark in emotional storytelling. It is a testament to the idea that the right moment in art is sometimes more important than the schedule or efficiency. By giving Thomas and the puppet time to bond, he allowed the story itself to breathe. This scene reminds filmmakers and viewers alike that emotion cannot be rushed. In the end, Spielberg's patience was rewarded with a scene that has endured for decades, a moment that continues to move hearts and define what makes E.T. timeless. Number 4. The Landfill Mystery. In an unexpected twist, the infamous burial of unsold E.T. video games in New Mexico became one of the most enduring mysteries in pop culture. For decades, urban legends claimed that millions of cartridges lay beneath the desert soil. How did a story about an alien become linked to real-world trash? The suspicions were confirmed when archaeologists and journalists excavated the site in 2014. Despite being dusty, recovered boxes of the infamous game were remarkably intact. It caused a stir in the media and revealed an odd combination of pop culture, corporate mismanagement, and mythology. One example of how captivating stories can persist for a long time after they are published initially is the mystery surrounding the dump. However, the irony is shocking. The film became a cinematic masterpiece, whereas the computer game was widely derided. Amazingly, what began as a cautionary tale about rushed production became a treasure trove of knowledge for collectors and historians. The mystery of the dump reminds us that things that are associated with failure can become cultural icons without warning. What does it say about our obsession with fame and failure when even buried trash can spark fascination decades later? The story of the landfill is more than a footnote. It is a mirror reflecting the strange and lasting influence of E.T. on global imagination. Number 3. The box office alien king. Could a small alien puppet dominate the global box office? E.T. proved that it could. Despite modest production costs, the film earned over $700 million worldwide, becoming one of the most successful films of the 80s. And every scene was purposefully designed to evoke a harmony of tension, passion, and awe. Between the tragic parting and E.T.'s glittering touch, viewers were taken to an intriguing and personal realm. The alien's power was not about appearance, but about connection. E.T. became well known in popular culture due to its great reviews and ardent fans. Notably, its success at the box office demonstrated the value of empathy in the business world. People did more than just watch the movie. They felt it. Each ticket sold served as a testament to the impact that passion and narrative can have. Number 2. The plant is like an alien without gender. E.T.'s design is instantly recognizable, but did you notice how deliberately ambiguous the alien's biology and gender are? Spielberg and his team wanted E.T. to feel universal, a being who transcends human categories. His plant-like features, glowing chest, and unusual limbs made him appear otherworldly yet approachable. By avoiding gender, the alien becomes a mirror for human emotion. Children and adults alike can project care, curiosity, and love onto E.T. without being distracted by conventional expectations. The choice to create a non-gendered alien emphasizes empathy, friendship, and connection as universal themes. This design decision extends to voice and movement. E.T.'s quiet hums, tentative steps, and expressive gestures communicate personality and emotion without needing a label. The result is a character who feels alive to all viewers. Spielberg reminds us that stories about identity can transcend physical form. Could the emotional bond between Elliot and E.T. have been as powerful if the alien had been clearly male or female? The film suggests that true connection goes beyond appearance. Number 1. The creepy crush that almost happened. Did you know there was a moment during production when the line between innocent friendship and unexpected tension almost blurred? How do you navigate storytelling when innocence can be misinterpreted? To maintain realism and the integrity of the relationship, Spielberg and his crew carefully managed the situation, adjusting the staging and direction. The scene was finally polished, focusing on genuine emotion, awe, and the bond between Elliot and E.T. without overdoing it. Additionally, the behind-the-scene tension serves as a reminder that making movies requires ongoing judgment calls. On screen, every touch and glance can have significance and needs to be used carefully. The final product demonstrates Spielberg's ability to strike a balance between realism and propriety, leaving viewers moved rather than uneasy. Looking back, it makes you wonder how often films must navigate the fine line between innocence and unintended implications. Could the magic of E.T. have survived if those delicate boundaries were mishandled? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.